think a lot of the problems with trust surround the fact that people are worried that there's no solutions out there. Nobody knows the answers to what's happening. So, whenever a disaster happens, you're like, no one's going to help me, or, I don't know whether the data out there is right. I don't know, even the question of where was the fire in Sonoma was a big question. People didn't know even what was happening at the current moment. And so, the way I think we try to solve that is by using data, using machine learning, and giving you these proactive insights ahead of time. We obviously understand there is an uncertainty behind it, but we are very transparent about, hey, this is what you can use even immediately after disaster versus taking weeks or months to collect that data. And then you have the citizens, just struggling and not knowing what to do within those weeks and months of lack of understanding. So one part is being proactive and being predictive and pushing for these insights as soon as a disaster happens, or even with the Hurricane Harvey, 5 days in advance, if you know what the rainfall is going to be, you need to help the citizens know where they should evacuate versus doing like a broad brush, let's say evacuate the whole city. That's going to cause panic, and that's also going to lead to loss of trust. So one thing is that. The other part, which we talked about, the vulnerabilities. The problem is and this probably everybody in the emergency department understands way more better than myself. But the problem with disasters is that we consider all these minorities and these vulnerable communities as annexes. And if you actually add all of them up, that becomes way more than the average population. So this can be pregnant women, these can be low-income population, senior population, different sort of races. The problem is when an actual disaster happens, these sort of communities get unequitably affected, and they actually struggle way more than average population. So a big part of what we do is actually even add another layer on top of our impact layer, which is what we call our racial equity, our demographic equity, which then helps you understand which pockets of vulnerable population are probably unequally affected. And this doesn't mean they have a higher percentage of damage compared to another population, but this just means that on an average, this particular population is struggling even more than the average population. So you need to reach out and figure out what special response you need to give to these particular segments of people. The other part about the PPP part is that obviously one part is the structural impact, but after all, the secondary effects, the cascading effects, your dependencies, healthcare may be up, but the power might be down, or food might be down. How do you even figure out what would that imply? So a big portion of even what we do is one we call dependency creation, in which we work with individual sectors and help them figure out what the secondary or the primary effects would be. So that now we don't even just go and tell them that, hey, your structural integrity is compromised, or these are the vulnerable population which could be affected because of your compromise. But we can also tell them in advance that, hey, 5 days ahead of time, you need to worry about your power system, you probably have a faulty food supply system, etc.
Yes, please. Here comes the microphone.
Prabhu Shankar, faculty in health informatics at UC Davis. This question is for Nicole. So where do you get, what are the sources of your data?
Yes. So we use 3 main types of sources. One we call the built environment, which is everything related to a structure, be it beams, be it number of floors, be it material, etc. The second type we use is the natural environment, which is things which surround the built environment. This can be distance to a tree, it could be elevation, it could be multiple different things. And the final third element we use is what we call live incident data, which is things which change between a state of normalcy to an actual disaster. So this could be amount of precipitation, amount of shaking, etc. Now, we obviously understand that many times there will be gaps in the data. And so a big part of what we do is also feature inference, wherein there are several different data sets out there which are highly correlated to missing features. And then we use that to finally create like this huge data set regarding each and every structure on the ground. So that's what we do. Yeah.
Thank you. Right here.
Hi, my name is Kara Spaz, and I'm here as a UC Berkeley Master of Public Health student just finished. How are you verifying or considering that the technology that you're working on is not increasing the disparities? When we talk about communities that may not have the same ability to use technology, we already talked about people who lack documentation, sometimes the elderly, people with disabilities. How do you take into account, while keeping that Pareto principle in mind, perhaps how do you take into account not increasing those communities' disadvantage?
A big part is sometimes, the tech company might not even understand that there's a vulnerability in that community. So it's about even getting these voices heard, having a representative from these communities talk to these tech representatives and help them understand that, hey, these are the issues we're facing. So, we've tried in our way to hopefully bridge that gap. On our company, we have Craig Fugate, who's the ex-head of FEMA. He brings about, obviously, several years of experience in how to handle disasters. We also have Jim Featherstone, who is the head of the LA Fire Department, who helps us understand from the fire response side. And we work with several different universities. These universities are local to their cities and help us understand what are the gaps there. But we need to have more voices being part of this disaster resilient approach. And only then can we truly understand how do we solve that issue.